Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Reed. I am the director of Bridgewater State University's Senior College. Thank you so much for being here with us today with this special event with the Alzheimer's Association of Massachusetts and New Hampshire. We're going to get started in just a moment with our presenter, Carolyn, who she's presented quite a few of these events, and she's also a member of Senior College, which we're very proud to claim her as one of our great members. But I just wanted to take a moment to say folks are introducing themselves in the chat. So if you'd like to do that, that's helpful. So we have a sense of who's who and where folks are from. So people are saying their name, where they're from, and one thing that they're looking forward to this fall. So again, I'm Jennifer. I'm here today with my colleague, Darlene Marks. Darlene and I work together to help manage Senior College. So thanks for being here, Darlene. And just wanted to give the 2-second plug for Senior College. If you're a member, great, welcome back. We're thrilled to have you. But as most of you know, we're a lifelong learning program here offered by the university. We have a great schedule planned this fall, many new courses. Our courses are both fully on Zoom like this, and we also have in-person classes at the Bridgewater Public Library, at BSU Attleboro, obviously in Attleboro, and at the Center for Active Living in Plymouth. So if you're someone that likes to come and gather with people in person, then you can certainly check out our courses that that are in person, but then we have a lot of Zoom courses. And one of the benefits of our Senior College, once you join, is that a lot of our courses are recorded. So you can go back if you miss one and watch it later. So it's a really convenient way to participate. Of course, most of our members participate live, like in real time, like we're doing right now, but a lot like to take advantage of the recorded classes as well. It's $85 to join. We're the most affordable lifelong learning program that I know of, certainly in New England. A lot of programs, their fee structure is set up differently, where they have a membership fee and then a price per course, and or they have a membership fee and they have a limited amount of courses that people can join. Whereas in our program, we have about 40 courses this semester, and you can sign up for as many as you like, which is a really great way of experiencing a lot of things. And that way, if you don't like a class, you don't have a huge investment in it financially. So we also offer scholarships. So if you're on a fixed income and you would like a scholarship, all you have to do to get one is to just email me and tell me that, and you can have one. So if you have a friend that you think would like to join, but maybe they are on a fixed income or whatever, just send them my way. And then also, if you're over 90 and over is completely free. So you can have a lifetime membership to Senior College for those that are 90 or over. So tell your parents or your neighbors or your friends about that option. Last semester, we had one person take advantage of it, and I'd love to see, wouldn't it be so cool if we had 10, over 90 people in Senior College? Most of our members are somewhere in their 60s and 70s, but we have quite a few members that are a little younger and even a little older in their 80s. So that's my spiel for today. We have about an hour today to have this program. It's a really important program that's near and dear to my heart. My mother experienced Alzheimer's before she passed away, and I know that I wish I had done more to educate myself while I was in the thick of caregiving for her. So I'm really proud that we're able to offer this program today. And without further ado, I will, also, if you have questions along the way, feel free to put them in the chat, and then Carolyn can answer verbal questions at the end too. So feel free to type them in the chat. And if it's something that I think quickly can be resolved or answered, I might interrupt as the moderator, but yeah, feel free to use the chat as we go along. And Carolyn, thank you so much for being here today. I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Jen, and hi to all of you. And maybe I'll be seeing you in classes this semester. So as Jen said, my name's Carolyn Lazarus. I'm a volunteer educator with the Alzheimer's Association. A little over 10 years ago, I did my first retirement and started working in the elder services field. And I've worked for several area aging access points, which are nonprofits throughout Massachusetts that are really a central place for individuals to get some services as well as find out about other services. So I have done both caregiver support as well as options counseling. Caregiver support was providing support, resources, counseling, anything trying to help a caregiver, which for anybody who has been a caregiver, you probably realize it's one of the toughest things ever to do. And also have done caregiver trainings, and I facilitate a caregiver support group. And kind of in the middle of that for a while, I did stop working to take care of my dad who had vascular dementia. And I just want to kind of clarify the terms, because a lot of people, there's a lot of confusion, it tends to be, about what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's, are they different, are they the same? I had a caregiver once say to me, oh, thank God, we went to the doctor and he doesn't have Alzheimer's, it's only dementia. Well, that's a really inaccurate kind of statement, because dementia is not a disease. It's this, they call it an umbrella term that's used to describe the host of cognitive changes that happen to someone in their memory, their thinking, their reasoning, planning, all of those things that we need to carry out activities of daily living. But the cause of that is a disease. Now, Alzheimer's is the most common disease that causes dementia. Counts for maybe 60 to 80% of all dementias. There's also vascular dementia, frontotemporal lobe dementia, Lewy body dementia, and I think there's over 100 different forms of dementia. And again, it's what the disease does to what parts of the brain and how it does it. I did hear, which I thought this was just such a great example on a video I was watching to describe it. You have a fever. So you have the symptoms of fever. Your body temperature is up, you might have chills, all of that. Well, that's having a fever, that's the symptom. But why do you have a fever? And that's the disease. Maybe you have the flu, maybe you have an infection, maybe you have something else that's causing those symptoms. So dementia is the fever and the flu is the disease or the Alzheimer's. So now I'm going to start sharing my screen. Okay, so our objective today is, by the end of the program, you'll be able to kind of understand some common triggers for behaviors associated with dementia. Understand a process for assessing and identifying challenging behaviors, and list some strategies to address some of the more common dementia-related behaviors. It's important to remember that all behavior has meaning. It has meaning for us as well. The big difference, though, is we're able to kind of control, assess why we're behaving in a certain way, and understand what we need to do to modify it. I was thinking about this the other day. I got very short with somebody and was irritated. But even while I was talking in a very irritated tone to this person, I knew it was because I was upset about something else and that I needed to try and modulate that. Well, for that person with a cognitive impairment or some form of dementia, they can't do that processing. They can't do that reasoning to try and control their behavior. So typically, difficult behaviors start to arise in what's called the middle stage of the disease. Often that's when communication starts to become more difficult. The person isn't able to process what you're saying, and they're often not able to form the words to respond appropriately. So they might only catch a little bit of what you're saying. We also offer another course called Effective Communication Strategies, which is a really great course on just overall communication techniques when with someone with a cognitive impairment, and we look at some strategies for early stage, middle stage, and late stage. So kind of why might there be a behavior? So it might be pain or discomfort. It can be something as simple as that tag on the shirt that is just itching or irritating, or the belt is too tight, but the person's not able to kind of understand where that discomfort is coming from, or maybe share what it is. They might be overstimulated or understimulated, might be bored. So maybe the TV's on and the news, and you have, shooting and all kinds of loud voices and things, and that might just raise that anxiety within the person. They might have become fearful or frustrated. Maybe a new person has come in that day to help out, and they don't know who that person is, and they're worried about what that might mean. They might have tried to do something and they're frustrated, and it's not happening the way they wanted to. Unfamiliar surroundings, so maybe the caregiver has had to go away and they're staying with another family member or something else. Routine and familiarity are really important for an individual with a cognitive impairment, that there's a lot of comfort to be gained from the repetitiveness of a daily life and knowing what to expect when. Or maybe there's a task that they have done before, putting together something, and suddenly they can't do it. So they might maybe throw the pieces of the thing and kind of lash out. So it's always trying to think about sort of that feeling inside the person, which is often this sense of anxiety and just feeling and not knowing what to do or how to control it, or how to make it go away. So the person may react by just trying to push it away. So there's, in this presentation, we're kind of going to look at 4 steps, a process to try and figure out what's happening, why it's happening, and how to respond. And then we're going to talk about each of these, not each of these, but using these to address some common dementia-related behaviors. So the first thing is to understand and detect and connect. So it's important to try and join the person in their reality. And this is true whether it's you're trying to respond to a behavior or just in everyday life. The actual facts of the situation become far less important, and it's much more about the feeling and how they are perceiving what's going on. You should always try and be aware of your body language, particularly as the disease progresses. So much more is conveyed by your tone of voice, how you approach them, trying to not do it by walking up on them and leaning over. That can feel very intimidating to a person. It can intimidating to all of us, but again, particularly for that person who can't figure out what's happening and why is this going on, and who might not even in the moment quite recognize who you are. Your tone of voice, that can matter so much more than the actual words that you use, and to try and keep it as upbeat, even, positive as you can, even while everything inside of you as a caregiver might be screaming and just have had it. It's to try and have that talk in your head be positive. Often try and think about, having that smile in your head, your face, and your heart. And those kinds of things can help how you approach somebody. You want to try and look at the situation through their eyes. So, that banging or the beeping out there from the Amazon truck is no big deal, but for them, maybe it's triggering something. So you want to try and work to calm them, to make that person know that you're there to help them. You're going to work with them. You understand that they're upset, and you're going to work to try and make them feel better. One thing that can help is journaling, and particularly if it's a behavior that seems to be happening pretty frequently. Oftentimes, when we think back on things, we don't recognize or pick up on all the little things that kind of surrounded that. And that's why journaling can help you, because if you write it down at the time and then you go back and you look, you suddenly realize, this happened almost every single time that they got upset. It was when this other worker came, or when the worker was late by 20 minutes, or when we had to move the time to the afternoon. But when it's something that's happening somewhat sporadically, it's a little hard to kind of pick that up. So thinking about who, what, where, when, how, kind of what's happening in the surrounding piece. It's also important to avoid quizzing and memory language. Our inclination is always, don't you remember, Mom? This is the new worker. Or don't you remember, Mom? We're going to the doctor's today. But what do you want? What is it, Mom? What is it? So they can't, they don't remember. There was a couple of years ago, there was a conference the Alzheimer's Association did, and they had this wonderful panel. It was on Zoom. They had this wonderful panel with some individuals who were early onset. So they were pretty young, late 50s, early 60s. And two of them talked about how really stressful that quizzing memory language was for them. And they both were, no, I don't remember. That's why I have all these memory aids and this and that, but no, I don't remember. And that was very difficult for them. So you want to try and think of whatever's happening from that person's perspective. I think about physical needs. So there's a number of physical things that can cause behavior changes. A UTI, dehydration, pain. I knew an individual in a nursing home who was very advanced and had no communication skills, but was generally a pretty calm kind of person. Well, he started to get very aggressive and kind of swatting the workers away and becoming difficult. Well, it took a day or two, but they finally realized he had a toothache. Now, he had no ability to kind of share that, so it took some working to try and figure it out. But once that was resolved, he calmed down again. Person might be hungry or thirsty, but again, not kind of realizing how to ask. It's important to always remember that when you meet one person with dementia, you've met one person with dementia. Every person, their journey is different. The things that are affected are different. Their behaviors are different. And oftentimes as the disease progresses, their behaviors can change, what bothers them or doesn't bother them. So you might have a person who's very advanced and is very easily able to say, I want to eat. And then somebody at a much earlier stage who just can't articulate that. Maybe they're bored, the lack of social interaction. I think there's going to be lots of studies over the next few years about the profound effect that the pandemic had on people with a cognitive impairment and the decline for a number of people during that time because of the lack of social interaction. Could be environment. Is the room too hot, too cold? May be cold and not realize about putting on a sweater. Again, a UTI, maybe it's a medication change. So is there a new medication that has either been introduced or removed that maybe is causing this? You kind of thinking about the physical needs. So this, address physical needs first. Obviously, if you know that there's something that you can address quickly, but I think the most important thing is to try and bring comfort and ease to that person. I think it's a really stressful thing to feel that level of confusion and anxiety, and you want to try and bring that down for them. Then addressing the emotional needs. Again, focusing on the person's feelings, not the facts. Kind of the facts don't matter. So oftentimes people can have difficulty, when the man's wife says, "Where's my mother? Why hasn't she come to see me today?" And for some spouses, the response is, "Oh, for goodness sakes, don't you remember your mother's been dead for 40 years? And then what happens is the person, one, she didn't remember, and she grieves all over again. So the feeling, maybe, our mothers give us that sense of security and connectedness, and maybe that's what she's missing at that moment. So it's to try and redirect, to try and make them feel comfortable and at ease. We encourage people to use what's called Therapeutic Biblics. So again, it's not to say your mother's been dead for 30 years. What's wrong? She can't come today. Or if that bothers you, I haven't seen her today, which is not really a fiblet, because you haven't seen her mother. Just what you think will bring the person comfort. Using what you know of the person to the effective interventions. So ice cream is always a good one. That's something to redirect. Maybe it's to go outside and look at the garden, look at the flowers, go for a walk. Let's go sit on the porch. It's a beautiful night. Something to move their focus off of whatever seems to be bothering them. Knew a caregiver who said her mother would get going in a conversation, and she would just really get herself wound up and just, oh. And so she started using this, "Oh, by the way," and then would go off and, "Oh, did you see the town is building a new bridge?" Or, "Oh, by the way, did you know that Mary got married last week?" Something that kind of moved her mom's focus off whatever she was doing, and they were then able to kind of bring it down. Another caregiver told a worker, "My mother may be wrong, but she's always right." And I think that's a great thing to kind of remember. It kind of doesn't matter whether they're right. You just need to make them feel okay, and redirect them. We're going to hear from Rose, whose mother had Alzheimer's, about some ways that they use to redirect. I think it's always important to remember that we all want to feel that sense of purpose. That doesn't go away with the disease. We want to feel helpful. So things that we can do to make the person continue to feel that way are important. It's also good to remember things don't have to be perfect. So you ask the person to set the table, and it kind of doesn't matter if the forks are on the left or the right or where the spoons are, but they've done it.
She was part of the family, she'd fold towels, and she'd fold towels all day long some days. Just, put them back in the basket, and then she'd give them to her, "Here's some more towels." And it may sound like it's cruel, but look, it kept her busy. It kept her movements going. It kept her, just kept her occupied, and it made her feel wanted and that she was contributing. We created a routine for her that worked for her around her agitation and, her sleep patterns. So every day she was in the same routine for the most part. And every day she did something. She was always in the kitchen every day helping do something. Sometimes she'd rinse dishes. but she was always near the kitchen sink because she spent most of her life in front of the kitchen sink. Now she was just doing it in different ways. And yeah, going for a walk, going out in the car for a drive, walking around the yard, watering plants. Those are all things that she did, and we just had her continue doing them.
So that's showing how using what was the person's preferences is a way to help redirect them in a positive way. So then kind of when you've managed to calm things down, or, maybe the person is happier, but they've gone into the other room and they're sitting quietly or dozing or something, thinking about how did it go? Are there ways that I could have done something differently for the next time? What went well, what didn't, and how to make adjustments? Maybe there's, more help that's needed. Maybe you realize it's how important a routine is and how really deviated from a routine that day in ways. And there's often a saying I've heard workers who go in, take 5 to save 20. So I got her out of here in a rush to make that 9 a.m. doctor's appointment. This woman who never gets up before 8:30 in the morning, but I had to get her up at 7:30 so we could get to the doctor's for 9. And then all afternoon it was awful. Well, maybe that's just too much for her in the morning. So I need to have my doctor's appointments in the afternoon in order to allow the accommodation of that's her pattern, that's her behavior. Every day is a new day. Sometimes you can even start a new day by going into another room, taking a nap, having somebody else come in and kind of exchange with them. And then they're able to be more accepting when you come back. So now we're going to apply some of these steps to some common challenging behaviors. So this is Anne, and I'm not going to read all of vignettes, but anxiety agitation is a very common dementia-related behavior. Again, I often think it's that sense of being unable to process and understand so much of what's happening in the world and not be able to do anything about it, and not knowing how to reduce that agitation. So Anne is pacing every night at the end of the day and just doesn't want to sit down and just keeps pacing back and forth. And the family doesn't really know why she's doing that and can't figure out, but it's really upsetting her. So you're first going to think about detecting and connecting what's going on from her perspective. What's the time of day that this is happening in? Who else is around? What else happened during that day? But making that connection with her, because the first thing is to try and help her feel supported, help her feel connected to you, help her feel that you're there to try and help figure this out for herself, for what's happening. So things, I'm so sorry this is happening. I'm so sorry that you seem that you don't want to sit down, or that you're walking, that you feel restless, and let's see what else we can do. Again, thinking about your tone of voice. So even though you're very frustrated, it's to try and keep that out of your tone of voice, because that person may not understand those words, but they sure understand that tone of voice. We used to do this little thing in a caregiver class that we did, where we would say a compliment, but in a nasty tone of voice, and then say something nice in an angry tone of voice. And people were really surprised at the effect that how they felt about the angry voice, even though I was saying something nice about their clothes or something like that, can really be powerful. You want to try and do things that the person will respond to. You have to remember that you have the power to control how you respond, how you interact. The person doesn't have that power. Think about physical needs. Has something changed? Is there something about the clothes they have on, or medications, those kinds of things? The physical need piece is going to be almost very consistent throughout any behavior. The emotional need, making them feel more at ease, thinking about redirecting. So it turns out in the little vignette, Anne worked as a charge nurse for many, many years and worked the 3 to 11 shift. So about the same time that she was walking around pacing in the home would have been similar to the time that she was going around the floor. So maybe you can redirect by giving her some files to work on, you know, a clipboard and papers to file, things like that, and have her sit at the chair to do it. Several people I know that who have worked at assisted livings have talked about finding women at the door with their purse around 3 o'clock many afternoons, and kind of, you know, what's up? Got to get home to meet the kids on the bus. Had done that for years. So they said, oh, and this is where it helps to know the situation maybe, or something generalized enough. The teacher calls, they're late from the field trip, or so-and-so is picking them up today. They don't need to be picked up at the bus. Let's go see so-and-so who's doing X or Y. And then you start to, at the end of the day, earlier, you know, like 2:30, get them involved in something engaging so that that time of day just passes and they can move on from there. Confusion or suspicion. Again, confusion, I think from is almost a constant state. It's just how much anxiety it brings about. But one of the things that can happen is often people don't recognize familiar people, places or things, or they may put things away and forget where they've put them, and then accuse people of stealing them, and might misjudge, you know, your husband is talking to that Meals on Wheels lady. He talks to that lady that comes every single day. She brings food. I think he's, you know, cheating on me with her, those kinds of things. So you want to, as always, try and realize that they're upset about something, make that connection with them. Again, this is where journaling can help. You can understand what's happening when, the physical needs and then the emotional needs. You're not trying to convince the person of the accuracy or inaccuracy, but trying to, what can I do to make them feel better? So maybe if it's the Meals on Wheels driver, see if they can leave the food out, if on the steps, I know they don't like to do that. If there's somebody else who can pick up the food, just enough, maybe you can have your spouse go to the door and pick up the food. You could let the agency know that there's this issue so that they could alert the driver, who I think Meals on Wheels drivers are among the unsung heroes in caring for older people, because they just do such a nice, quiet job of that. I'm sure the person would be understanding about kind of modifying some things. When my dad was in a nursing home for rehab, kind of the first couple of days, it was very, very rough behavior. And he kept talking about this guy and this guy who was there. Well, then we realized that the bed was up against the window, and when it got dark, he could see his reflection in it, but he didn't recognize it as himself. He thought there was a guy standing outside his window. That was an easy thing to fix because we were just able to shut the blinds, and that helped. But again, that was part of, you had to kind of figure out, well, what, why is he thinking that? This is something different for him. He never kind of talked about seeing people or any of that. You want to try and avoid arguing. So, mom's looking for this piece of jewelry that she gave to your sister. Well, it's not, but now can't find it because she doesn't remember giving it to your sister. It's not to argue with her about that. It's like, oh, I know how difficult it is when you lose something, can't misplace. It makes me crazy when I can't misplace. But we said we would go out for ice cream tonight, so I think we should go do that. And then maybe later we can look. And Jeannie is coming over tomorrow, and maybe she can help us look and try and deal with it then. Maybe it's to have your sister bring the jewelry. And if mom is still fixated on it, you can slip it somewhere and have it be found, and deal with it that way. Again, it's sort of trying to be creative about ways to bring ease and comfort to the person. So aggression. Aggression is often one of the most scary things. It can be verbal or physical, and often for no apparent reason, and often in people who were not people who were aggressive or angry or behaved in that way before they had a cognitive impairment. There might also be a trigger. So for this one, I am gonna kind of read the vignette just because I think it really has a lot in it. So Anne's husband, Bill, is standing at the back of the room, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, watching TV. Anne walks in and tells him sharply, "You aren't the boss here." Bill ignores the comment and continues to watch television. Anne comes closer, raises her voice and says, "You can't tell me what to do." When Bill doesn't respond, Anne comes up to Bill and hits him on the arm with her balled fist. Prior to her dementia symptoms, Anne was quite calm by nature and would never have exhibited this behavior. Lately, her outbursts are becoming more frequent. She continues to come at Bill, who retreats from her and locks himself in the bathroom to avoid further conflict. He does not have a cell phone with him. Since both have been avid hunters when they were younger, there are guns in the house, but Bill has removed all of the ammunition. So I read this one because my first thought is always on this one, this poor caregiver is probably stressed to the max, but the behavior, typically people don't stand and watch TV, but certainly the behavior of crossing his arms and leaning against the wall has that feeling of negativity. And it's really kind of an angry feeling. You aren't the boss here. So maybe, caregivers, routines are important for people with a cognitive impairment. And oftentimes caregivers feel like they need to get all of this done. They, depending on their situation, maybe they need to go to work, whatever. But, okay, come on, it's time to have breakfast. Okay, it's time to have your shower. Now, come on, you got to go get dressed. You got to do this. We got to get this done, and it's done. So it starts to feel maybe for Anne on this particular day, a whole lot like I have no control over anything, and this person is controlling everything in my life. He's not my boss. Standing there like this, that feels like he thinks he's in charge and my boss. I'm gonna tell and show him. Then Bill locks himself in the bathroom. Often encourage caregivers to get a lifeline, and they'll say, well, why? She wouldn't know how to push it. Well, it's not for her, it's for you. Because one is in a situation like this, Bill had a lifeline, doesn't matter if he has a cell phone, he'll always have the lifeline. But also if something happened to Bill, he fell, couldn't make a phone call, and may not be able to make that phone call, and might not be able to get help. But if he has the lifeline, he can call for help. Sometimes, stepping out of the room is good, but he stepped out of the room, locked himself in the bathroom, and who knows what Anne's doing. And Anne could walk out of the house, and we're going to talk about wandering later, but Anne could walk out of the house and Bill would have no idea. And then there's the guns. So Anne takes a gun, goes out, the EMTs and the police are coming, goes outside. They don't know that there's no ammunition in there. So the best bet really is to get rid of the guns and the guns, period. But this is a recent behavior, so that's definitely an indication about there may be a medical thing going on. And so you want to talk to the doctor about, again, a UTI, dehydration, some kind of medical interaction of medications, and then kind of see, well, how can I avoid this the next time? Maybe it's to try and go slower, give her more choices. And it can be frustrating because you want to get things done because you have things to do, but see if you can give her more choices, more control over things. So there's no longer a video on this one, but on a prior version, there was a video with Rose, and she talked about her mom spoke Greek, and she would just say these really nasty things to her in Greek all the time, just like very abusive. Well, Rose understood all of them, and it was really upsetting. Rose's husband, on the other hand, didn't understand any of it. So he could just sit there with her and let her mother go on and on and on and wasn't bothered by it. So sometimes it helps to have that kind of independent, neutral, different person come in and break up that dynamic between the caregiver and the person with dementia. That emotional distance can be really important. They're upsetting but not dangerous most often, but they certainly, can be dangerous. You want to think about what other safety measures. When we talk about wandering, we'll talk about some things you can do within the home, talking to the person's doctor and calling 911. You can talk to the EMTs ahead of time so that they know that there's a person here with a significant cognitive impairment, so they're better prepared if you have to make a quick call and you're not able to provide a lot of details. I know I have heard caregivers talk about waking up in the middle of the night and the person standing there with a knife. So these things can happen, and you just want to be, if you think any possibility, you want to be prepared. So repetition is a very common behavior. Repeating words, particularly repeating questions or behaviors over and over again. Oftentimes it's a way for the person to keep that connection to the caregiver. You think of that caregiver, particularly if there's a primary caregiver who's there most of the time and is doing all of these things, that for that person with the cognitive impairment, it's pretty frightening, but that person is their anchor and they need to keep that connection to them. That person, though, as a result, the person is, you're not going to go. I know you're not going to leave me. You're not going to go anywhere. I can be mean and nasty to you if I want. And other people in the family say, oh, mom is so nice and she's happy. I don't know what's wrong with you. I don't know why you see that. And it can be really difficult. That primary caregiver can really have a tough time. In another program that we do, the effective communication, one of the videos, the woman describes changing that thoughts in her head, that this is not her. She said to her mom, I just answered that question. You already asked me that. And her mom replied, no, I did not. And she realized, in her mom's perspective, this was the first time she asked the question. So she changed that self-talk in her head to be, okay, this is the first time mom has asked the question, first time I'm going to respond. It's not perfect, and it doesn't mean you're not going to be frustrated and upset over it, but it's something that can help. So Dr. Fazio is going to talk about repetition.
Repetition is really one of the most common and also frustrating behaviors for caregivers. It's important to really just take a minute, take a breath, and really think about how you could help that person with the answer that they're looking for. It really makes no sense to sort of bump heads with them and try to correct them or try to tell them to stop asking it, because they really can't remember that they just asked you that a minute ago. So thinking about how you could provide an answer that's reassuring, even though you might be doing it over and over and over again.
So his comment about taking a breath before responding, that can be huge for a caregiver, to just take, a couple of seconds to take that deep breath in and let it out. Frustration gets too much. I often tell caregivers, go in the bathroom and do a silent scream to get that stress out of you, and then go out and deal with whatever's happening. So Anne's situation with the repetition is that her daughter is coming to visit in 2 weeks. And every day she's asking Bill, is Katie coming today? Is today the day Katie's coming? Cognitive impairment can cause a person to lose the ability to kind of understand time spans and the lapse of time. Had a caregiver who said to her mom on Thursday, I'll pick you up on Saturday and we'll go see Jenny and her new baby. And the next morning, her mother was at her door, had crossed a really busy street and said, you said you were going to pick me up. You didn't come. Mom had no concept. So when we talk about time, we really don't want to talk to people with a cognitive impairment about things that are going to be happening in the future. So Anne's having trouble kind of understanding that passage of time and knowing when it is that Katie's going to come. So maybe the first thing would have been to not get into the date. But now that she knows Katie's coming, it's still a couple of weeks away. Things like a calendar and mark it off every day, something visual that might help her. The other piece in the vignette that I didn't mention was she's now started to go to the bathroom much more frequently. So that's an indication that maybe there's a UTI or something going on. But it's to try and ease her to understand, not, I already told you 3 times today, because she doesn't remember that she's been told 3 times. Katie's not coming. Let's go check the calendar and let's see where it is. And this is today and this is Annie, and we'll mark it off and we'll do that so you can look at this. Those kinds of things. She's anxious about Katie coming, so maybe a way to address the emotional needs is to start looking at some pictures, or something else in the house that might make her feel like she's getting ready for Katie. And then think about, okay, so this is going to happen again tomorrow and will probably happen until Katie comes. So maybe Katie can call mornings and say, oh, I'm so looking forward. I can't come today, but I'll be there soon. And that might help. So it's all very dependent upon what is going to have that right connection to the person. So then wandering. So 60% of people with dementia will wander. Can happen at any stage without wandering. So often say the person will say, oh, she would never wander. She hasn't wandered at all. And then lo and behold, go home that day and the person's not there because for whatever reason, they have decided to leave the house. It could be that they don't recognize this as their home. In the vignette, Anne's looking to go back to New Jersey, where she hasn't lived in 30 years. But at this moment in time, that's where what she's thinking of, that she doesn't recognize this as her home, and she's looking to go back to it. Maybe the person's bored, doesn't have enough to keep occupied. And I think, the mind kind of wanders a bit and goes to odd places and can get worked up about different things. Always looking at, is there something physical going on? Does it happen at a particular time of day? There's often a sense that the person is trying to get away from something. Sometimes it is that, the person has been being left alone and has been doing fine, but they're declining and their judgment, and they're continued to be left alone. So this day they start to feel anxious over the fact that they're alone. So they leave the house to go looking for their spouse, but have no idea where to look, how to look. So you want to work on that. In the scenario where Anne goes wandering, she often does it when Bill's in the shower. So maybe that's because she doesn't realize he's in the shower. All she realizes is that she's there alone, doesn't see anybody, and she should go home. This is not her home. She doesn't recognize it, so she needs to go home. Maybe he could shower at a different time of day. Maybe he could set her up with an activity or something productive to be doing that would help her. Making a salad, again, these things don't have to be perfect. So, not cutting tomatoes with a knife, but ripping up lettuce, washing the lettuce, drying the lettuce, make sure it's good and dry. Think about many, many steps. Tasks have many, many steps. And you think of making a salad, you think of the lettuce. Well, you got to open the bag, you got to wash it, you got to dry it, you got to tear it up into small pieces, you got to have a bowl. So you want to think about all those steps and have them do all of those steps, because for that person, it may take a very long time to do those steps. So kind of just like some summary thoughts, you want to think about, how does the person feel about the situation? Focus on the feelings, not the facts. Making that connection so that the person knows that you realize that they're upset, that you're on their side, you're there to help them. Make the person understand that you're going to fix it, whatever it is, even if it doesn't actually exist, you're going to fix it. You're going to take care of things for them. Sometimes we have to apologize for things that we didn't do, have no responsibility for, or didn't even happen. But it's kind of like, in the scheme of things, if this is going to make her feel better, I can say pretty much everything. I'm so sorry I did that. I didn't mean to do whatever it was that has nothing to do with anything you've done, but it doesn't hurt us to say, I'm sorry. Trying not to take the behavior personally. And this can be really hard. You're dealing with somebody who, if you're taking care of somebody at this level, you're dealing with somebody that you love and who loved you, and you're used to how they responded to you. And when they're nasty to you or they're not nice, they say mean things, it's really hard to not take them personally. And I think that's where that self-talk can be so important. We encourage caregivers to kind of use the phrase that it's not the person saying this, it's the disease, because that's who it is. It's the disease that's saying this. This is not who this person is. And then redirection. Redirection is so important, and just simple things can have a big effect and really change things for them. And then think about what you're going to do the next time and how you can maybe avoid the behavior coming out entirely, or maybe just being able to stop it before it gets more out of control. So the Alzheimer's Association. So there's lots of ways to connect with us. I do think one of the most important, significant, and the best and easiest way is the 24/7 helpline, 800-272-3900. Jen, if you don't mind, can you put that in the chat box?
Of course, yep.
Thank you. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, there's a master level clinician available. And I always use the same thing on all of them. So whether you're looking for other programs like this one, whether you or someone you know needs an assessment of cognitive functioning because you're not sure what's going on and what to do, or you're that caregiver at 1 in the morning and it's been the worst day ever, and you've tried all of these strategies because you've done a million trainings and programs and all this other stuff, and nothing worked. And the person you care for is sleeping just fine, but you're hanging off on your fingernails. There is somebody there. And sometimes you just need somebody to listen. They may or may not have any other suggestions from what you've tried, but there's a lot of ability when you say it and you share it with somebody who understands. It can be really helpful to a caregiver, which is why if you are caregiving, I would encourage you also to find a support group. There's lots of them around different places, and it really is, so many of the caregivers I've worked with have said, I never thought I would like a support group. I can't imagine going to a support group. And then, 6 months later, we'll say to the new person, this group saved my life. I don't know what I would have done without this group. So I would encourage you to look for a support group. So any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn, so much useful information. I could see a lot of heads nodding as you were talking, and I was certainly doing the same. I love, how you said focus on feelings, not facts. I think that's so important for caregivers to let go of the facts from the perspective of the person that's suffering with the dementia. Great information. Any questions, folks? You go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question for Carolyn. Okay, well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Forward to seeing you in the future. We usually have 2 of these events at the beginning of every semester, so check back at the senior college website for more information, and of course, visit alzheimers.org for more information or call the hotline. Thank you so much, everyone. It was great to see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.